Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I'm Jonathan London, your host. And if this is your first Geekscape, strap yourselves in for some pop culture talk. Usually we talk movies, video games, comic books, TV, all the pop culture stuff that can fit under a hood. But this one's a special. We're going to be going on a major deep dive with my friend Ian Kerner on Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. That's the big Marvel movie that just came out this past weekend. I don't know if you saw it. Maybe you haven't heard of it. Did they do enough publicity for this one? I don't know, maybe, but they did. You definitely are hearing about the MCU movies at this point. They're unavoidable, and this one definitely was for Ian and I. We were there on opening night to check out this movie, and it introduces on the big screen Kang the Conqueror, the Jack Kirby creation, the time-traveling Avengers villain, but he's introduced in an Ant-Man movie. Is that for the better or for the worse? Well, I'm going to talk to Ian about it, and we'll get all in to like the nitty gritty on this Ant-Man 3. So there will be major spoilers. I'm going to tell you that. If you have not seen Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you're definitely going to want to come back for this one. We're going to spoil the heck out of it. So please take this as your final warning. But we'll be right back after this opening, and we'll talk all things Ant-Man with Ian. Hang tight. All right, Geekscapists, let's talk Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, the third Ant-Man movie. Peyton Reed is back as the director of this one, and it introduces on the big screen Kang the Conqueror. You've seen Kang the Conqueror already in the MCU. He was in the finale of Loki, and Ian's going to give me lots of backstory on who he is. I know who he is, but that's for you. If you're not familiar with him, he is the time-traveling Avengers villain, and because he's a time traveler, he can traverse the multiverse. And if he makes a mistake fighting the Avengers, he can go back in time and fix the mistake, or have a different version of him fix the mistake, or make multiple versions of him throughout time to stop the Avengers at every twist and turn. Kang gets out of hand very quickly in the comic books. To me, who are my top Avengers villains? Well, okay, I'm gonna put Doctor Doom, who's my favorite MC like Marvel villain. I'm gonna put him squarely over at the Fantastic Four, even though he's a villain for the entire universe. Magneto, he's squarely an X-Men villain. Okay, as far as Avengers go, Loki's the reason that the Avengers got together. So you got to put Loki at number one. He's the top Avengers villain. And if you're reading the new Avengers Forever storyline going on through the two Avengers books, it's a lot of Loki going on, and it's really actually pretty well written. Kang's number two. And so that's why I think that this MCU treatment's doing a really great job. Is Loki is the big bad. You got him. Thanos, I'm putting him behind Kang. He shows up, but Thanos is a character that wasn't created until later. Kang has been a problem since, the late 60s, 70s? We'll have Ian confirm that one. And so I'm going to put Thanos squarely third. So top Avengers villains according to Jonathan. You got Loki, Kang, who you got in this movie, and then you've got Thanos, and now we have them all on the big screen, and we'll talk about it. All right, I'm going to bring Ian in here. I hope he's finished his prep for our conversation. All right, because here he is Ian Kerner. The if there is a Kang to the Avengers, to the MCU, Ian is that to the Geekscape. Ian, how are you, man? My multi-versal arch nemesis, Ian the Conqueror.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good, I think.
Well, Ian, I say that because, like Kang, you've traversed these comics quite a bit, both in the past and sometimes you know what's happening in the future.
Hey man,
Not unlike Kang.
I'm getting so old that it's the multiple decades I've been living in these universes in my head
You're
now feels
Kang.
like time travel, right?
Yeah, so you're Kang. You're the Geekscape's King. That being said, we got him in this movie. We've seen him in Loki. I thought he was great in Loki, but that was a version of Kang in Loki.
Well,
And
I
in
don't want to
killing
jump
him in
ahead of this
Loki,
conversation,
right? But in killing him in Loki, you unleash the possibility for this Kang, and there are differences in Kang, and we will get to that. But this is the third Ant-Man movie. I thought it started off with the same kind of Ant-Man fun, and then basically the plot of this movie, Geekscape, is that Hank Pym and Janet Pym, they're all happy. Hope Van Dyne is now successful. She's using everything post Infinity War and Endgame has turned things up for Scott. He's now a celebrity. He's been given the title of saving the planet. I'd give it to that rat who got him out of the quantum realm to begin with. But basically, Scott's the person everybody thinks for saving the universe. And he's got one problem. It's that Cassie Lang, his daughter, is detached from him. And at the beginning of the movie, he gets her out of jail. She's been at a local she's been kind of she's like a she wants to be a freedom fighter. She was at a local like march and she got arrested, and she wants to do good things, and she sees Scott as somebody who saved the universe, sure, with the Avengers, but now just kind of resting on the laurels, not really helping people anymore. But she wants to, and she and Hank have created a device that can communicate back and forth with the quantum realm. Janet's like, hell no, that's a terrible idea. And before you know it, they all get sucked into the quantum realm. It's pretty much the gist of it, right? There's a scene right before that, but why don't you tell us about this?
And I mean, we could jump into this a lot of ways.
Into the quantum realm or into the conversation?
Well, jump into the conversation a lot of ways. You hit upon something in the plot that right away irked me a little bit. And I love the idea that, that Cassie sees Hank Pym as grandpa, but did not feel where did this come from, this idea that Cassie's now super intelligent and doing this amazing quantum realm science experiment with Hank Pym? Like, if she was really his biological granddaughter, then you presume that level of intelligence, but like, Scott's a thief. I don't know what her mother does.
Right. Judy Greer's not in this film.
Did that seem weird to you?
So the opening gives me a little bit of a problem. And yes, they streamlined it. There's a lot that they chew on.
I like
that
she's feisty and fighting, and I buy that and being tough and all that. But like, she's a super scientist.
Well, immediately when I have a
teenager,
immediately the stability of this movie starts to kind of falter because there's no Judy Greer, which I think Judy Greer's input as the mother would have helped. But also there's no supporting cast for Scott.
We're going to get into that in a second, but just to stay with my point, they basically, what they did in that moment by doing that, they made her Nadia.
Yeah.
So for people that don't know, in the comic books, Janet Van Dyne was the Wasp. Okay. Janet in this is what's become the first generation Wasp. Okay. Which is Hank Pym's wife, Michelle Pfeiffer. Mm-hmm. So initially, we find out about her fleetingly in the first movie, and that's why, Hope was made up for the movies, and that's why Hank was holding Hope back because they didn't want to go down that path. But she's the first Wasp we see, but she's actually the second Wasp. In the comics, Janet Van Dyne is the Wasp, and Hank Pym, her ex-husband, had a daughter no one ever knew about, Nadia, and Nadia becomes the second Wasp. And at this point in the comic, Hank's gone. That's a whole thing. Ultron, whatever. We can get into that, but not relevant to this conversation. But Janet's actually now adopted Nadia, and Nadia is super smart like her father. She's a total scientist. She has this organization called Girl that, so she's doing all kinds of scientific stuff. So in essence, what they've done doing that with Cassie is they've incorporated that aspect of Nadia into Cassie, which I like in a way. It just sort of feels like out of nowhere. So I just thought it was worth commenting on.
Yeah, but we learned pretty quickly that she has a full grasp of the Pym particles. She's using them in these marches. She's being political. She's being active. She wants to save the world. I think that character definition is good. She's got the same pluckiness that her father has. But you're right. The streamlining of this plot very early to get us to the quantum realm as fast as possible
So,
does leave a little bit of stability out of it.
Yes. And by the way, in the comics, Cassie does end up with superhero identity. She has these side-shifting abilities, and Stature is who she's mostly been known as in the Young Avengers. Now, there's an alternate reality, this Marvel Next that was going for a while, where she actually becomes Stinger with a purple costume and all that. So, and I felt, whereas this movie doesn't quite get to exactly which way she's going, because it sort of combines both. But I think that, she's somewhere in between the two of them, maybe both. Who knows which way they're going to go with her on that.
I think ultimately, and we'll get to the end fight sequence and the end battle sequence.
Yeah, well, they went with Stature there, but
they went with Stature, and that'd be pretty good for a Young Avengers team.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Hank Pym originally was Ant-Man, then he was Giant Man, and I always liked the idea that he can go either way. I like the idea small and big, and because once you're using them, it's just which Pym particle do you use, kind of thing. Right. So I like that a lot. So it might be that they don't do, they give her a completely different identity, because each one calls, on the other ability, right?
So they get sucked into the quantum realm. And what we've known from the opening of this movie is that Janet spent, and we know this from the last movie as well, that Janet spent a very long time, 30, 40 years in the quantum realm. Time we know that it goes differently that way. Michelle Pfeiffer will always be beautiful, but that didn't hurt it.
No, and by the way, and that is called out, like that is specifically a storyline that happened to Janet in the comics.
Very recently, too.
Not that recently.
I thought it was in the last 15 years that she was in the quantum realm, and she
she
emerged.
Recently, the last couple of years,
she emerged in Central Park from the quantum realm.
Yeah, but and for a bit they acted like she was dead, and it turned out no, she was just in the quantum realm, which is essentially, well, look, here's the thing: the quantum realm, the microverse. Usually you talk about the microverse with Marvel. And the idea of the quantum realm in this movie, even Subatomica is another thing for microverse, right? So they actually reference that they went through Subatomica into the quantum realm.
Right.
So, but this idea that there's going smaller and smaller in size, you end up in sort of this other universe. And there are beings there. And, and the very famous thing that, for those of us that grew up in the 70s or maybe 80s, remember the Micronauts. And the Micronauts, they were from the microverse. And within the comics, they'd come out of the microverse, into the real world. But oddly enough, I shouldn't say always, they were usually small when they came over, which sort of doesn't make sense, because you're shrinking, you're growing. There've been plot lines where someone shrank down to the microverse, and if they didn't shrink all the way, then they were bigger. But if you shrink down to scale. So it's all a question of scale, right?
But the microverse is out of the question here, because Hasbro owns the Micronauts.
Well, the Micronauts, yes.
We're not going to see that in the film.
But for instance, there was a character that Marvel created that wasn't part of the toy line called Bug, whom, even though Marvel lost all the other Micronauts characters, Bug stayed around, was actually part of the storyline that led to the Guardians in the 20th century. But there have been other storylines in Marvel Comics that utilize the microverse and Subatomica. The most important for our conversation is Jarella. Jarella is a character that the Hulk got shrunk down into the microverse at one point, and he met what was the love of the Hulk version's life was Jarella, because it was a planet and everyone was green-skinned. And the Jarella storyline is important because two characters in this movie came out of the Jarella stuff. Both Bill Murray's character Krylar came from a very quick appearance, like he was a similar character in a Jarella story. And then Jentora was actually Jarella's niece.
I was wondering, as these characters show up, and these are characters in the quantum realm, Cassie and Scott get separated from the Pyms and from Hope, and Cassie and Scott meet Jentora while we have the Pyms meeting Lord Krylar, and you realize that Janet had this relationship with Lord Krylar, which is comedic. But I'll tell you, meeting both, I'm just going to call them the Micronauts, meeting Jentora and those freedom fighters with Cassie and Scott, and obviously Cassie takes right to their plight. And then meeting Krylar, you realize in the 30 years or in the time that Janet has been, the brief time from Ant-Man 2 to now that Janet's been gone, what ended up happening was she abandoned these freedom fighters to Kang, and she's also responsible for Kang fixing his ship, but not being able to escape the quantum realm because she sees psychically what Kang is capable of and sabotages the ship at the last minute. And so basically, in the time that Janet's been gone, these freedom fighters and Lord Krylar and all these people who lived in the quantum realm have now been put underfoot to Kang, and Kang is just looking for a way to like fix his ship and get out of the quantum realm. That is Kang's purpose. And in a big way, he blames Janet for the destruction of that ship. I mean, Janet helped him fix the engine in his ship, but then realizing what Kang is capable of, she sabotages the engine by embiggening it to where he cannot use it in his ship. And now you're caught up. These 30 minutes to me, Ian, were fun. They were creative. There's so much visual creativity going on the screen. There's some fun characters. It's really bananas. I'm laughing. I'm loving it. I think that it's hurting the movie. As much as I loved so much of the stuff that was going on in this sequence, none of it really pays off in any way that either goes back to what the characters need or what the story needs. As fun as it was, it starts to wear a little bit and you wonder where the movie is going. I don't think the engine of that movie kicks in until Kang comes back into the film, and you realize, like, oh, the big bad's here. He's serious. He hates Janet. He needs Scott to shrink the engine and get out of the I'm gonna call it the microverse, out of the quantum realm, and he's the person with the engine for this film. He's the person that's getting the movie clicking again. But those 30 minutes for me, fun, creative, cool stuff. Not going to say any of that really came back. So it really lost a bit of momentum there. And I don't know if it ever really got it back. How do you feel, Ian?
I think I enjoyed this movie more than you did, you know. And surprisingly, my wife liked it, and she's very critical. But you know, mostly for her, she definitely had, you know, her issues with it. But you know, I think all of us agree Jonathan Majors is great.
He's,
you know,
fantastic.
And definitely the movie, everything comes alive when he's on the screen.
Very much so.
And if you weren't already a fan, you know, getting the multiple versions of him in the mid-credit scene was just like, yes, please. As my wife said, okay, more of this, I'm here for it.
Yeah, since Tim Allen in Christmas with the Cranks have we had the actor play that many characters. It's going to be a lot of fun.
But you know, I went into the movie having heard that you know, I avoided the reviews, but basically the general sense, you know, that the negative reviews from critics was, oh, it's all just setup. And I didn't feel it was just setup. Is it setup? Sure. For me, it's setup I've been waiting for. You know, after Loki, it's like we've been starved, and frankly, we've been complaining. Okay, we have to wait all the way. Like, where are they seeding this? You know, at least the other Marvel movies, you know, the mid-credit scenes, you'd have something that was seeding its way toward what's coming down the line, and we really didn't see much of it. And honestly, I've been worried, as you know, as people that watch this know, I've been worried about us ending up in multiverse fatigue, right?
Sure.
You know, I mean, it's all going to seem the same, and suddenly I'm not as worried about that. But sticking to just this movie in itself, I feel it's unfair to say all this movie is setup.
And I disagree with that as well.
Yeah. This movie, I mean, they set up the idea of exploring the quantum realm in the first movie, and very much the second movie necessitated this movie. You know, for me, look, my biggest complaint for the Ant-Man franchise, you know, this movie being the third in the Ant-Man franchise, is the lack of the supporting characters. And I get it. They're in the quantum realm so quickly, you know, so where are they? But I mean, even a cameo, like, to me, it's a bummer we don't get those guys.
Yeah, we don't get Luis. We don't get David Demalshin's character. He did a voice for one of those freedom fighters.
Exactly. But you know what? Like I want to know where they are. And you know, they got where his life is now. Where are his buddies? You know, where's the security company? Like, couldn't we have just gotten, you know, a little aside of how the security company is doing well, whatever, something?
We got one glance at Jimmy, the FBI agent.
Jimmy Woo,
Jimmy Woo. We got one glance at him, and that was about it. I kind of was expecting to see Ghost in a sense, even
and we're getting Ghost and
like
Thunderbolts. I
that's
didn't leave
right.
the Ghost
That's
here
why.
because it makes sense to
Right.
me that she's not part of their lives.
Sure,
But
but
the others is a
yeah.
giant disappointment. And I think, I mean, it's a disservice to the two that come before because they're major parts of the other two. Again, as I said, I get that it's just we don't see him here because it's just not where the story was. But in looking at the three of them as a trilogy, as a piece, that's
it
majorly
doesn't
missing.
progress it. No,
It made sense that they didn't show up in Endgame.
Yes,
that made sense. I was fine with that.
There's a blip going on, very much so.
The blip and and the others, and they're not combatants and whatever else. Fine, that I get, but they should have been in this movie. So that's my biggest complaint. Beyond that, some people talk about Hank being, Scott being marginalized. I mean, a lot of people feel this was Michelle Pfeiffer's movie. All that doesn't bother me as much. I've literally heard people say, "Oh, it's Michelle Pfeiffer and and Cassie." Like
I don't agree with that at all.
And even if I did, I wouldn't have a problem with it. It's just part of the story. It's fine. It's it's Ant-Man Quantumania. It's still he's very much in the movie. He's not in the movie.
I think Hope got most of that most of the treatment of being pushed to the back that I thought anybody did.
Okay.
But Scott is very much in the center of this movie. He is the person Kang goes to say, "Hey,
I agree.
I need my engine. It's been enlarged. You can shrink it, but in order to do so, you have to shrink to such a size and go into a probability storm in order to shrink it again so I can put it in my ship and get the heck out of this quantum realm. I have Cassie. I will kill Cassie. You need to go do this for me." I thought that was the center of the movie. I enjoyed it. I love that we'll get back to MODOK.
Speaking of that, and the idea that he did something that seemingly no one else was able to do, once again gets us back to that first movie. This idea that he has something about him that he just is able to keep his conscience a little bit clearer. Jumping the quantum realm and all of it.
He's recruited to do a job. That being said, that job is not stealing something. That job is just to shrink. So I started to scratch my head at that. I love the probability storm sequence visually. I think it's so much fun. And I love that the only thing that really saves him, I mean, yes, Hope comes in and helps. The thing that really saves him in that probability storm is he has Cassie. And he has this purpose. And he has this daughter he has to get back to. So even though he's split into multiple infinite versions of himself, he can get them all to work together, knowing that they all share this love for Cassie, and that's the solution. I thought that was a great character moment. I thought that was an amazing sequence. I loved that. I'm going to jump forward to the problem I have with the end of this film, in that the solution to the Kang in this film, and it is a complete film, folks. It's not just set up. The Kang that's introduced in this movie is the Kang that's defeated in this movie. But the way that they defeat, I
still want to talk about who the Kang in this movie is.
And I'm still thinking about that too.
Loki.
Right. So I'm thinking about this one.
So let me just say this. I think everyone knows this, but Jonathan and I saw the movie together. But going back from when Geekscape started, as a rule, which I think we once or twice maybe have made a couple comments, but we just said, other than maybe hearing each other's reactions in the movie, we did not talk about it at all. We really don't know how each other feel about the movie.
Yes. We'll discuss who we think this actual Kang is, and if he contradicts the existence of the Kang at the end of Loki, because the existence of the Kang at the end of Loki, he who remains, and knowing that he's the one who remains, did that happen before he was exiled? I think it would have to have been, but we'll get to that. What I want to say about the ending of this movie is it's the solution to this movie isn't inherent to Scott. It's not inherent to the Ant-Man concept of shrinking and enlarging. Kang is activating his ship. He has the engine working. He's got to stop it. The Pyms are safely back on Earth. We don't know that Kang is still alive because we saw him get crushed by a bunch of ants, et cetera, et cetera. Kang's still alive. Scott has to stop him. And it turns into punching. It turns into I can punch more than you. I can punch more than you. It doesn't turn into a solution based on size. Yes, Scott does slap a bunch of shrinky dinks and grow dinks. That's what I'm calling the little devices onto the engine to destroy it. Kang is sucked into that. I think a better ending, honestly, Ian, having introduced the probability storm, would be that Kang beats the crap out of Scott. He's about to kill him. And Scott says, he's like, I've won. And Scott's like, no, you actually lost. And Kang realizes that the one thing that Scott can do is be a sneak. and he snuck some of these things onto Kang, and he shrinks Kang to the point where Kang is stuck in a probability storm that we've already introduced in the movie, and Kang's stuck in a probability storm with versions of Kang. They don't have a Cassie, they don't have a purpose for working together, and Kang actually doesn't work with other Kangs. There can only be one Kang, and that Kang would have been stuck in that probability storm for the rest of time, fighting increasingly growing numbers of him. And that would have been a cool ending.
That's an interesting idea, except that the mid-credit scene actually shows something wrong with your thesis, which is Kang's can work together.
I don't think that's going to last, Ian. I don't think that. I just telling you, I don't think that's going to last. It never does.
This actually gets into exactly my point that I was thinking about in regards to this Kang and He Who Remains. In Loki, He Who Remains, we find out this is the Kang that was victorious, that basically he destroyed all the other universes. He dealt with every incursion event and he ended them. And he says this is important because otherwise incursion events will cause the end of everything. So what I thought was brilliant about that Loki episode is it actually postulated this idea, is Kang the bad guy? Now, from Janet's point of view, he killed trillions, right? But do you have to kill trillions for there to be anything left?
Sure.
Right? But at the end of Loki, what happened? The decision was made to not follow his advice. And in that moment, the multiverse was born again. But of course, because that's happening outside of time, that has ramifications across time. So, because things aren't linear in that sense, right? Because where Chronopolis is, he's out, but things have happened before now. So
and I think the expulsion of this Kang came after the events of that Loki finale. And
after I think is weird. The vocabulary
exactly.
My point is this: they say the Council of Kangs banished him. My interpretation was he is that Kang. He is the one that becomes He Who Remains. He's the one, the enemy of all the others that did beat them.
So he survives.
I think so, because the question is, the time perspective on this is very confusing.
Sure. Things can fold in on themselves.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at the end of Secret War and Kang Dynasty, is the ultimate thing that, he was right, and we end up with one universe, and there he is in the background as He Who Remains? Maybe.
Not if Doom has anything to do with it.
Maybe. But I'm just saying that, there's that. And so that was an interesting thing. Because my take on it is all of this is because of that, right? So
my take
them
on
all
it
existing again is exactly that. They are coming from the he said here what He Who Remains said. They're coming. Yes. That's happening.
But my take on it is that the Kang and Loki was taken off the board. You
keep calling him Kang. He wasn't Kang. He was He Who Remains.
Okay. So he Who Remains is taken off the board. All the Kangs can now exist. The Council of Kangs happened. This Kang gets exiled.
He Who Remains is taken off the board at the end of his life.
Yes.
But where's his previous life?
Yes.
His previous life?
I don't think he survives this movie.
It seemed like he didn't.
Right.
I'm just saying.
And how many times has a Kang conquered all the other Kangs and gotten to the top of the heap? I think this is something that happens in perpetuity.
Sure.
And so that ending, when you see an arena, the mid-credit sequence, where you see the arena of Kangs, they're going to end up fighting each other. And that's what Kang always does. Kang gets defeated by Kang, whether it's Iron Lad, whether it's a different version, like Kang stops Kang.
Because they're going to be incursions. And this is what we know. We know this is leading towards, there's all these universes, and it's going to shrink and shrink and shrink. And we're going to end up with incursions,
right? We've already seen incursions in Doctor Strange. And yes, Battle World is what I think that the actual
Secret War is going to be.
I love that Hickman story because it's a big glorified Fantastic Four story, and Doom is at the center of it. That's why I love it so much, folks. Doom's easily my favorite villain.
Well, but it's also borrowing from, so originally the original Secret War was the Beyonder bringing all these beings to a planet, And the idea that this new Secret Wars was, well, all these different universes are represented on this one planet where they're battling. I mean, it's just really cool.
Ian, sidetrack. Are you reading that All Out Avengers line that Greg Land is doing?
Yes.
How did you like turning that page and seeing what the cliffhanger is on that issue?
Yeah,
it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of the Beyonder, a character that was so drenched in, like, it's basically Neil Diamond or like Knight Rider. He's so 80s and 70s
look,
cheese.
That
the fact that they're bringing him back to Marvel,
then he gives himself, dark curly hair.
He looks like David Hasselhoff in a Neil Diamond jumpsuit, and he was a villain in the 80s. And the fact that they're bringing him back into the Marvel comics right now, I was like, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. That was hilarious.
Remember that it's Steve Rogers, and then he just changes his hair.
And the other thing is too, Ian, and I'm going to spoil the Avengers Forever storyline going on in the comics right now. Like, Loki's is the OG Avengers villain. Like, I thought that storyline, I thought that issue was so great.
Yeah.
Well, not only the reveal, but the follow-up issue talking about how Loki decimated all the Avengers, all the realities, everything, and then he was left without defenders of the planet that he ruled.
Yeah, it's like,
and when the Celestials show up and Galactus shows up, there are no Avengers to save him, and Loki had to not only recreate the Avengers.
Coming out in a couple of months, doesn't it?
not only did Loki have to recreate the Avengers, he had to protect the Avengers and become Avengers Prime. It was awesome.
Well,
yet again, he becomes the reason
that
for the
idea
Avengers.
because it's always this thing of like the bad guys trying to kill. I mean, even in DC Comics, they're going to kill Batman, like on the street in Gotham. Batman ends up helping the Justice League save like the planet, the universe, all these things. Like, this is kind of a bad idea.
Yeah, what are you going to rule if you take out the people who are saving it?
Yeah.
So Ian, that the movie was a little bananas for me. It had some stuff that
it was fun.
It was fun. I wish the ending did have an ending like that tied into what Scott is and who Scott is, or what the concept of Ant-Man is. It did just feel like it descended into Punch Fest. Let's talk about possibly the most in characters who were introduced, especially in that first 30 minutes that you're celebrating the quantum realm and having a lot of fun. Those things don't really pay off. We don't see Bill Murray's character come back and realize that he was wrong and lead the freedom
with that.
Help. Like, it would have been great to see Lord Krylar come back and be part of the good guys, and Janet put that seed in him that he was a better person.
Or the bad guys, whatever. But you're right; it doesn't pay off. We see this big rebellion, and these freedom fighters take advantage of or get called in, but we don't see that. I do think that's lacking. But honestly,
there were 2 Rise of Skywalker endings in this movie. When the rebellion came in, and then when the ants came in, I was like, stop. Whoa. This movie borrows a lot from Star Wars. Is that the one you want to borrow from?
Let's talk about the ant thing for a second. It was clear when they're falling in, the ants fall. Okay, great. That's how it's Ant-Man. How do you use ants? You got to bring ants down.
Yeah,
it was cool.
The ants followed them into the quantum realm.
That the ants mutate over thousands of years. Why was it thousands of years? Where were they? That it's thousands of years for them.
And did they build the society that they're fighting on? Where's their society that
I'm
built?
saying like
I got you, brother.
It's not like they got stuck somewhere else that thousands of years went by.
They were there. Yeah.
So
they're on the same timeline. I don't know. There was some messies. There was some messy stuff in this movie. One of the things that I enjoyed the most was MODOK. Until they overdipped the Oreo on it and it got a little soggy.
Listen, all right, let's start off. So MODOK.
Let's talk MODOK, please.
So,
because you heard me laughing my butt off when they brought MODOK in.
I loved MODOK. I loved MODOK. First of all, I thought it was important that we got him, because obviously the way the first movie ended totally made sense. He'd show up again. And then you get into things that the MCU's done all along the comics, where they take concepts and they put them in places you don't expect them. And by the way, it was the same thing with Darren Cross in the first movie. Darren Cross is in Yellow Jacket in the comics, So I thought that was kind of clever, and I enjoyed it. Some people commented on the face, the CGI of that being a little distracting. I personally felt that's what MODOK should look like. I think it's distracting because you know Corey Stoll and what he looks like, so it makes you focus more on doesn't the nose and things like look so fake. But MODOK looks like that.
Yeah,
and he looks
MODOK is
unreal. Like
yeah.
the look of MODOK with that giant head and it's sort of flattened out and stretched in this really weird way is exactly what MODOK should look like.
I thought the treatment of MODOK visually and character-wise, and then ripping on MODOK was some of my favorite parts of the movie.
Hysterical. So funny. I loved it. Loved it.
The one thing I think would have helped was if MODOK, in the rescue of Gentora and the freedom fighters that Cassie undergoes, really dictates MODOK as Cassie's villain in this movie, which he kind of becomes. But the ending should have flipped the table on the fact that Darren, dressed as a bee, quote unquote, scared Cassie in her bedroom when she was 6 years old in that first Ant-Man movie. And having like Darren submit at the end because he's scared as hell of being stomped by a stature, by Cassie who's in Big End, and is like, hey, now I'm the person terrorizing you. Fold. Instead, Darren kind of does his character turn and then dies. They take MODOK from us. We don't get to see AIM MODOK. We don't see MODOK in front of a bunch of beehive suits in the MCU.
True.
Can MODOK
can easily come back.
Well, he's a mechanized character, correct?
Yeah. Well, this is a MODOK.
This is a MODOK. That's what I want to hear you say.
So in the comics, MODOK is George Tarleton, who's part of AIM, and it's an experiment to increase his intelligence and becomes MODOK.
Yeah.
So there's nothing saying there can't be another MODOK.
Please, thank you. Thank you.
There's no reason they can't make another MODOK. First of all, with Kang, you can even have this MODOK again.
That's what I like to hear you say.
You know?
Thank you.
Besides the fact that there can easily be another MODOK. That's easy.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better because I was sad when MODOK died because I was having so much fun with him.
Imagine how he felt.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm okay with Darren Starry dying. I didn't like MODOK dying. That made me sad. Ian, let's go into the Kang. Let's do the Kangness. That's the business, but Kang style. Can we do the Kangness? Tell me about that end credits. Actually, tell me about Kang. And my friend Christian Blatt, who runs a couple podcasts on this network, has asked me to ask Ian, what is a definitive Kang storyline?
Honestly, I think a really good, there was a Kang miniseries, I think it was last year, and actually in the Marvel Infinity, if you do the, if you do any of that streaming stuff, they actually pretty much reprinted it, it's like Kang something or other, 10 issues, like very recently. It was like a perfect lineup for this movie, and it changed a little bit, but it actually sort of cleaned up all the different versions of Kang.
Are you talking about the Jackson Lansing Kang the Conqueror miniseries that happened? Yes. It was only 5 issues, but it was great. It was 5 or 6 issues.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good. And it doesn't really go against anything. Well, it doesn't go against much specifically. But I thought it does a really good of cleaning up the Ravonna stuff. And it actually added some layers.
Who is Ravonna? Help my Geekscape out. Okay. Who is Ravonna?
Well, let me get to that. So basically, Kang's origin is that he's from the 30th century. And eventually we find out that his original name is Nathaniel Richards, which is relevant because Richards is the last name of Reed Richards. He's a descendant of Reed Richards. But apparently he's also somehow a descendant of Victor Von Doom. And apparently life at the time he's from is really boring. Like they have, machines and everything, do everything for everybody. And he's super smart and he wants adventure. He wants to go out there, he wants to learn things. He basically finds his way into, to Dr. Doom, goes to Latveria, finds the time machine and starts is going to travel in time. What that miniseries did different, though, is we always knew that was basically Kang's origin. And first, he was Rama-Tut. He was a pharaoh ruling in Egypt, and the Fantastic Four show up. I think it was in Fantastic Four issue number 2, and they fight him, and they end his reign. Then he goes on and becomes the Scarlet Centurion because he's basically copying Dr. Doom's armor. Then he becomes Kang. Eventually, at some point in the far future, he becomes Immortus. And Immortus is the one that's most like He Who Remains. And then, at some point, Immortus has a kid Marcus, and Marcus actually is who steals Carol Danvers. He basically takes her to limbo and makes her fall in love, and comes to the event and makes her pregnant, and basically she gives birth to him, and he comes to full size like right away, and she leaves with him. It's really weird, ugly thing.
Sounds weird.
Happens.
Sounds pretty weird.
Yeah. So, but anyway, but versions of Kang basically fight the Avengers forever. But anyway, in this miniseries, and I don't know if I should spoil it exactly, but they do something really interesting where Kang comes to Nathaniel Richards before he's Kang, when he's just embarking on this, and he takes him
on his time travel journey. And yeah, you keep going, because this is my definitive Kang story.
Yeah, and he takes him because he says, and it's this whole thing about you need to never love, you have to be hardened, and all this stuff, right? And initially, you don't know what the deal is, and he's like trying to beat things out of him. And they're in prehistoric times, and they come across a tribe, and immediately the young Kang, who's been training and all this, basically meets his first girl he's into. But Kang finds out about it, and basically, the whole end of civilization is coming, because the asteroid that's going to kill the dinosaurs is coming, and these people know it because they have prophecy and all that. But Kang basically comes along and he kills them all just to teach the other Kang a lesson, which leads that
the young Kang. He's like, listen, like, love is weakness.
So young Kang, then when Kang is drunk and still crying over this love that he lost, young Kang steals his armor and thinks he's left him there to die. Jumps, but then gets stuck in Egyptian times and ends up having to fight Rama-Tut. And
the Kang that's already there, right?
Yes. And that leads to, like, they actually bring in what they didn't know about back when Rama-Tut was originally in the comics. They bring Apocalypse into it, which is the X-Men villain who was so old, and we know he was also around in Egyptian times. So basically they get involved. The FF do show up. He jumps again. He ends up.
There's something important. He sees Ramona. He sees this version of the woman that he loves.
Yes, he sees
in
Ramona
Egyptian times.
Here,
everywhere he goes, every time he jumps to, he sees the woman that he loves.
But this time, yes, it's this Ravonna. Basically, he gets a sense right away that she's the same woman he met in prehistoric times. Her name wasn't Ravonna at that time.
There's one little detail, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is she not also the Moon Knight of that era?
Yes. In Egypt, she's the Moon Knight.
Right.
Yes.
It's fun. I mean, I like how much it tied in here, this stuff. It was a lot of fun. It may sound like a mess here, Geekscape, but it was actually Jackson Lansing and company did a great job on it. Yeah.
And listen, I don't want to tell I don't want to, for anyone interested in reading it, because it's worth reading. As I said, it's up on Infinity right now.
It's just called Kang the Conqueror. It's 5 issues. I think it's so clean.
Well, Infinity, it's 10 Infinities, but whatever. But he ends up jumping in time, and ultimately the twist is that he becomes the Kang that took him.
Yep.
And eventually he gets past that point, because the Kang that took him knows exactly what's going to happen and has a backup suit.
That he'll be killed in his sleep, right?
Well, he's not killed.
The suit was taken.
The suit. Yeah. So he wasn't trapped, and he goes on, and he determines at that point that he needs to figure out Ravonna keeps appearing, and he keeps losing her.
Yeah.
He remembers that she's supposed to die. In the version that the Kang lamented was supposed to die, so he tries to change that, and it never works. And he goes to the end of time and tries to do this thing, and basically he does this thing, this cosmic thing where he thinks he's creating all these opportunities that can go and save or whatever else. It doesn't work, because
she always despises him, right?
She ends up despising him. She ends up finding out what he did, and he's basically made her existence hell that she's going to keep recurring throughout history. So she just hates him.
She's the leader of a group designed just to combat Kang. But it's a fun story.
Here's the important thing for those of us watching this, wondering about how this connects to the MCU. Ravonna's last name in the far future, where Kang first met her, is Renslayer. She's Ravonna Renslayer. Gugu Mbatha Raw in Loki is Ravonna.
Oh, hold up. Repeat that again.
Gugu Mbatha Raw in Loki.
Which character was that?
Renslayer.
What does she look like on the screen, dude? Help me out.
Gugu Mbatha Raw is an actress, a gorgeous actress.
Okay.
She's
Mbatha,
she's black.
I'm
She's
looking. Mbatha Raw. Yeah.
Yeah, the character was Renslayer.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
the Indian actress.
She's not Indian.
She's great. Is she not?
No, she's black.
Let me see. She's black. Okay. Fantastic. Lambathara.
Lulu
Yeah.
and Bathara. Yeah, she's Ravonna.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ravonna
Got
Renslayer.
this.
Didn't I say this when we reviewed Loki? I didn't point out that
Ian, that was
Ravonna?
2 years ago, man.
That's true.
Isn't that insane? Not only is it 2 years, but Ian, let's talk about the MCU. Like, they're pushing their slate. Is it in reaction to some of the critical response to Ant-Man 3? Or what do you think?
No, this is all economics. This is everything going on in Hollywood. I appreciate a lot of people watching this might not know, but I mean, I think maybe I don't know this. I mean, money's a big thing. It started with Netflix. Suddenly, ooh, surprise, surprise. Netflix subscriber base isn't growing anymore because there's only so many people on the planet.
Yeah, they've
and there's a lot of competition. That was always going to happen. But so suddenly, for some reason, all the other streamers and companies behind them are going, oh, wait, we're putting all this money into streaming that everyone said wasn't going to be, actually financially lucrative for years. And suddenly that's a problem. So everyone's freaking out. And look, in fairness, speaking directly about Disney and what's going on in the last couple of years, Phase 4 has had a lot of creative slumps, right? There's been a bunch of disappointment. And money. Everyone's concerned about money. So, I mean, look, the shows, as we've reviewed them, I think you and I have generally really liked them, and we've liked the diversity and all that.
Very much.
How do you judge whether they're successful? I don't know. I mean, we don't see the metrics. We don't see the viewer numbers, and you get into an interesting thing about streaming. What is successful in streaming? I think a strong argument to be made for this, one of the big successes of Disney Plus is this constant Marvel and Star Wars content. People are saying there's too much Marvel and Star Wars content. But does that or does not guarantee a lot of people subscribe to Disney maintain that subscription? That was the point of it.
In
Geekscape, are they spending too much?
Quantumania made 120 million domestically over the weekend. Like, it is doing just fine on
more
earning
than just
money.
Fine relative to the other Ant-Man movies. Each Ant-Man movie has made significantly more than the one before.
Right.
But again, what I'm saying is, in terms of shows, I mean, what's successful for a streamer? There aren't commercials. So they don't have advertisers paying for space on it. So it's about people joining a service and maintaining their subscription.
But they pushed back two projects, right? They pushed back Ironheart and they pushed back
Ironheart and Echo. I've heard some rumors about Echo being doomed. I can't confirm them. That maybe it really is just going to be next year. Maybe it's not happening at all. Maybe they're going to reuse the stuff. I don't know.
But they've shot the material.
They've shot the material, or a lot of material. People have been saying to me, I've heard a lot of talk about they're doing a lot of reshoots on a lot of stuff. They want to change the focus. Some people are saying that it's creator driven in the sense of, I mean, listen, people are reactionary. People say all kinds of things. There are people that say stuff. They think, that there's been a trend in recent years to go more towards newer characters and, and concentrate more on women, on,
I saw a shirt on
underrepresented groups.
I saw a shirt that said, "Make Marvel male again."
I hate that shit. But I'm saying that's just it.
You have to go into the quantum realm. And
there are people that want the main characters to be white males.
Yes.
And here the truth is that the main characters initially were mostly white males. Because those were the characters that were
killed off
white
Thor.
males in the comics long ago.
You should be happy. No. You still got your Nordic god.
Yeah. To your point, they did female Thor without getting rid of male Thor, unlike the comics.
Right. And they pushed back the Marvels. These are female-driven stories that are getting pushed back. But there's
pushing back the Marvels surprised me.
How so? We're still getting Guardians in May, but the Marvels we were supposed to get in late June.
Because, I mean, look, I think you and I agree that I was incredibly disappointed in Captain Marvel. It made $1 billion.
Yeah.
But I thought the movie itself was weaker than it should have been.
Was there not a November release? That's where they put the Marvels. Was there not a November release? They could be doing it just to spread out the base.
What was supposed to be in November?
I don't know anything anymore, Ian.
I know
So let's see what let's close this out talking about what we're getting next and like where you think we see
we're
more of
Loki
Scott.
Next.
We're getting Loki next or Secret Invasion? What happened to Secret Invasion?
I thought Loki was before Secret Invasion for Loki.
I think Secret Invasion is first.
Secret Invasion is first, and then Loki's in the summer.
You tell me, dog. We saw a Loki scene at the end of Quantumania.
We're getting those two. What's that?
Who was that king?
That's Victor Timely.
Yeah.
So
what's his story?
Supposedly he's the original Kang. He's the first Kang. But at one point, Kang was in the early 20th century hiding, doing stuff. So he's that one. So
he's doing.
Yeah, clearly that particular scene was.
He's doing like vaudeville.
Loki.
Yeah, it felt like a scene from Loki.
Yeah, well, it was fun.
It was fun.
Yeah,
I like Kang as a vaudeville presenter. So I guess Loki is something that we might get this summer, but we get Secret Invasion probably April or something like that. I mean, we get a Mandalorian taking up
Mandalorian. We know when that's dropping. We haven't been given a specific date on that. I would imagine Secret Invasion is coming afterwards. What's that?
Yeah, I think that at the end, I would guess I'm in agreement with you. At the end of Mandalorian season 3,
Invasion in May.
Sure. Okay, we can do that.
Right? Because I think Mandalorian.
Let me check my schedule. Let me check my schedule and okay that. Yeah. I'll watch Guardians 3 and then I'll watch some of that. Yeah, that'll work for me. Let's do that. Disney, let's do that. Let's do May.
But the question that does beg, a lot of people commenting on, Marvel content between shows and movies and one after the other and not having them overlap. And so, because Guardians is
May, the first weekend of
May. So maybe Secret Invasion.
The Marvel weekend. Sure, some Marvel weekend.
So maybe Secret Invasion's a month or two after that because they're staggering the content.
Mm-hmm.
And then we don't get Loki till later. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So Ian,
they saved themselves a little bit by not telling us exactly when we're getting a show, so they could just decide to drop it at a different time.
Yeah.
What they were going to do without having to say they really moved it.
Keep cooking it a little longer.
Any more Hawkeyes got moved. We have obviously with what's happened to Jeremy Renner, there's no sense of when that would ever been. Echo indefinitely pushed. Ironheart, which I believe they've been shooting that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two I think they've been shooting, and who knows what they do.
They have not been shooting Daredevil.
Born Again? No, Daredevil. I supposedly started shooting. I thought it started shooting this past month. Mm-hmm. I heard the Daredevil Born Again was originally announced as 18 episodes, a single season. I heard that was divided into 2 seasons.
It's getting the indoor treatment.
Yeah.
That's great.
Or 1923.
Yeah. Okay, so Ian, where do you see these specific characters again? Where do we see Scott again, the Pyms again? And I really thought the Pyms were doomed in this one. I thought the second Kang saw Janet, that was going to add some severity to the story, and she was a goner.
We do know that Phase 6 will bring 2 more Avengers movies. If not before then, I think we certainly see them by then.
It's Phase 5. We'll see 2 more Avengers movies to culminate it.
No, that's Phase 6.
Oh boy. What culminates Phase 5? Why am I even looking to the end of a phase that just began?
We don't know. What they announced was pieces of 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
So, because the point is, Kang and Secret War is the end of the whole multiverse saga. Phase 4, 5, and 6 is the multiverse saga.
Okay, and Ian, more importantly, when do we see the red gooey guy from this movie again? Because he was my favorite character.
He's great. I'd love to see him again. Don't know, unless there's an Ant-Man 4.
Can you make a phone call?
I don't think it's going to help, but
I need to see him and Luis in a Disney Plus show.
I love it.
Okay. All right. I'll get on the phone and see what I can do.
Wouldn't that have David Disturbing, however you say his last name?
Dimashian.
Yeah,
he could be in it. Yeah.
But is he playing 2 roles?
Let's do it.
That work out?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's get them all in there. Let's do it. It'll be fun.
Yeah. I would watch it.
And please bring back Miss Greer as Cassie's mom, because I
love Judy Greer.
Love Judy Greer. All right, Ian. The next movie that we review may be a show. It might be Mandalorian season 3.
Okay.
No, Ian, I'm just messing with you. It's gonna be Shazam 2. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Wait, that's March 17th?
Yeah. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Listen, I enjoyed the first one. I think it's going to be fun. I agree with you.
I love the first one. All right, Geekscapists. Until then,
what else we have?
We're just going to bring you back.
So we'll have Guardians.
Yeah.
We'll have Flash.
Oh my God, I love that trailer so much.
So much.
Yeah. Flash will be soft rebooting the DC Entertainment Universe. I'm excited
somehow
about that.
Aquaman's after it. I don't know.
But Aquaman might be the thing that doesn't. There's a couple things that might not get scraped. I mean, we know Amanda Waller's not getting scraped out of the DC Entertainment Universe. You can pick and choose now. It's a true multiverse.
Came out after Endgame, and you found out at the end that the whole movie was, after Infinity War, and then you found out at the end that the whole thing was right before it. So
Yep. We can do whatever you guys want. I just like having comic book movies. Gabe Bravo brings us out on a positive note. And after Phase 4 culminated with Wakanda Forever, he says, I love Phase 4. I'm sad that there aren't going to be that many shows anymore. It was always something to look forward to every week. He loved the shows.
I thought Phase 4 was aimless relative to, we got Loki and then nothing else until we get here. But I did enjoy the movie, all the shows. And as I think I've said numerous times, the shows for me as a true major comic book fan were representative of the comics. They had different flavors and not necessarily for everybody, although I enjoyed them, I mean, there's different
There's
things
not a
about
comic
them.
you didn't like, Ian. They were definitely for Ian.
Well, listen, that's the thing is, I read Marvel Comics or DC Comics and I don't hate anything. I'm like, okay, that's what this thing is not my favorite, but I'll read it because I'm curious and all right, what are they doing here? And listen, yes, I read Ms. Marvel Comics for years ago. I'm like, this isn't meant for me, but I appreciate what they're doing. And it's more of an intellectual thing, and every now and then eventually they get me, as the show did, where like, okay, that was a good story, and you get the feels,
Well, Randall Biggins jumps in. I think he's in Florida. He says, well, hopefully we get an Ant-Man 4, and I could not agree more. I have fun with all these Ant-Man movies.
Would not surprise me.
I would love to see. After I made 120 billion over the weekend, I'd be excited for an Ant-Man 4, and I know Marvel would be too. Ian, dude, thank you so much.
Sure.
We'll see you on the next one. Geekscape is subscribe to Geekscape, share Geekscape with your friends, hit that little 5-star button on whatever podcatcher you're listening to this on, leave a nice review, and go to Ian's social media and tell him thank you and that he did a great job, and then quiz him. Ask him some comic book questions. Ian's there on the Facebook group with the rest of us, Geekscape Forever Facebook group. So ask him a million questions. He's a resource, not just for us, but for you. So please use him. Love you, Ian. I'll talk to you later, buddy. Bye, Geekscapists.